I do not want to stand here in judgment of any young person. I think the world has changed considerably and the filters are off. Yes, but as a community and as a government, we have a responsibility to keep the filters on as long as possible for the protection of those same young people. So for that reason, in my dismay at what I was witnessing on the stage, I have supported all of these organizations all the time. And I mentioned in previous press briefings that we have been having stakeholder meetings to actually ensure that the youth are protected, culture is promoted, and the message we send out to the wider world is one that is positive, that Carnival does not have to have that negative connotation, especially for our youth. An opportunity for the display of talent was very much lost last Monday evening. And the portrayal of the reasons of why it was done in the local media is also on another level dismaying. As a community, we are charged to ensure that they are protected. I even went as far as, even though I felt others weren't as committed, I stepped out on my own. I wanted us as a government to portray a unified approach with the St. Martin Carnival Development Foundation on how we will project safety, security for our youth. Many were afraid to deal with the fact that our laws already prescribe that children under the age of 15 should not be in open-bar danspartijen, as I have mentioned before. But it is not easily enforced. My premise is, as a parent, if you know that your child is not allowed to be somewhere, then at least 50% of those children will be kept home by their responsible parents. This will diminish the work that the Justice Ministry has to do in stopping, pulling them out of jump-ups and the like, and other shows where they're not supposed to be. I, in fact, commend the St. Martin Carnival Development Foundation for last year implementing age limits. With all change, there's bacchanal. With all change, there is for and against. And if you as a parent decide and choose to want to fight that battle to ensure that your child is exposed to all that, then you have that freedom at home because the internet is wide, the television is wide, and it's out there. As government, I believe we need to do more in regulating what our youth is exposed to. We need to encourage and empower parents also to be aware of what's available on internet and to put the proper screening in place at home. So yes, our youth are exposed to a lot. So it should be allowed on a stage during a youth show as well. I beg to differ on this, and so I walked after I couldn't handle it anymore, after I listened to the sentiments of others around me, including youth and adults, and I approached the police station in the village to ask them if they are listening to what is being said. A lot was being said also in French or Creole, and one of the hosts even said, the police doesn't understand it, so they can't stop us. So to me, that was flying in the face of our system, of our justice ministry, of our police officers as well. So I said, since they had enlightened me the week before I jump up, you know, the young people speak to this minister and explain to me what the song was saying. I was like, that is in no way appropriate for the little children that are running around in here. And it's not appropriate in the jump ups either. It is very sexually suggestive music that should not be allowed on the streets either. In fact, we spoke about this prior to Carnival with the St. Martin Carnival Development Foundation, and I believe it's their responsibility to ensure that clean lyrics, as they promoted in the beginning, are upheld on the streets, and either stop, pull out, or fine the bands and DJs that continue to play that music on the streets and in the shows to stop it. So they said to me, oh, Minister, we didn't realize that there was chanting going back and forth, Dutch side, F in Dutch side, Dutch friend side, F in friend side. That is inappropriate to me. One of the hosts, they tried to change it and change one or two of the bombs into acceptable terms, but the children, being children already, seasoned in it, they're following what was already started. Subsequent to that, the host, I guess, the promoter, I guess, who happens to be a part of the media, fortunately, unfortunately, started, I don't know what he told them, but, and I'm not responsible for that, my name was called out on the stage, which was inappropriate, but to the level that the show had already disintegrated, it was, for me, childish and petty behavior. I stood, I shook my head, I acknowledged. People around me were outraged. I was fine because the title of minister represents an office. It doesn't matter who's standing there. So you're insulting the government of St. Martin, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sport. So in that, I did not take the statement, as is promoted in Today newspaper and the Daily Herald, as offensive to Silveria Jacobs, the person. The words, the profanity, the vulgarity preceding that, I consider disrespectful to the youth, to the attendees, and to the government, the police, and everybody there of St. Martin. That's what I consider disrespectful. And I felt that the promoter should be held responsible for this. A warning was issued, after which I guess my name was called. Subsequent acts came out and again portrayed vulgarity in words, in actions, and specifically the sexual objectification of our females. It is for me unacceptable for 6-year-olds, and I'm going to use the words they used here, talking about what she wants, bend her over, backshot her. Those types of statements are being made, are being accepted by our young girls to be cool, to be in. That is the music. Now, these are the same young people who I have seen perform and perform at this level with words of integrity, words of upliftment. So why do we have to disintegrate to this level? Because it's popular, because we can get hits on Facebook and hits on YouTube. Popularity is what is destroying the communities around the world. And St. Martin is a mere 37 square miles. Are we going to allow it to destroy our youth? That's why I said what I said a little earlier about the research on parenting and discipline styles. We need to do a lot. The reality of the situation with our youth is a lot worse than people know. I am awaiting a report from that same committee collaborating between Justice, Youth, and VSR on the topic of youth, the state of our youth on St. Martin. And once that is available to me, I will hold a press conference on it. I don't need to wait on other stakeholders who are afraid to address the topic. Silveria Jacobs, Minister of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sports, will address it. I will stick my neck out there for these young people, because had I been a parent, and many parents picked up their children and left, I will stick up my neck. I will take the attacks of the media. I will take the attacks of those who are profiting financially from allowing our students to drink, our athletes to drink. I had to stop someone leaving the village last night again, from going to the booths as an adult and buying a mixed alcoholic drink and giving it to 2 youngsters who were under the age of 15. Yes, this is our reality, people. And if you don't want Minister Jacobs to stand up about it, tough. And if people's toes get tread on, tough. Because at some point we must make a decision as a community what is important, what must be maintained, and how we do it. And it starts with us individually and collectively. It starts with each parent. Parents, Juve morning is around the corner. Let me backtrack. Congratulations to those youth who were out there on the stage and having clean fun, displaying their talents. My apologies, no, I can't apologize, because I didn't stop the show. But the show deserved to be stopped. If after warnings you continue, you are responsible as a promoter for what happens, and you are responsible for the consequences thereof. If you are stopped and the police tells you that you are driving without a light or you are speeding, is it the fault of the policeman or is it your fault? Who's responsible? The person carrying out the rules or the person deciding? If the policeman decides, okay, I'll let you go, make sure you get it fixed, and tomorrow the police sees you again, do you deserve the consequences you get or not? So, let it be clear. The police has their hands full, so parents, fill your hands as well. Keep your children under 15 years old out of jump ups and other public areas that they are not supposed to be in. Children will be children, and if they want to drink, if they want to smoke, if they want to try things, they will. But we as adults shouldn't facilitate that. Booth holders, be aware of what's happening. If you realize an adult came to buy a drink for a child because they're doing it in view of everyone, report them. Report them, and they will be fined. Booth holders can lose their licenses, and they know it, and they can be actually shut down. SCDF, live up to your responsibilities. You are the ones outsourcing certain programs, and this, especially seeing the scheduling, was one of the only shows that our youth could come at, and so many parents felt so comfortable to just drop off their children, which I also consider wrong, because of that same 15-year-old thing. In fact, when I looked at some of the comments on Facebook, they said it should be 18, some people. I don't need to go to the extremes. The law on the book says 15, let's work with that. If you want to change it, let's take it to Parliament and debate it. But the sentiments of this minister is, we continue to objectify our females, we continue to make them sex symbols, so that to take away the importance of the leadership that I had to take in that show, to objectify me as sexy Silveria. If that makes you feel powerful as men, to God be the glory, as some would say. God be with you, but what goes around comes around. But guess what? It's coming around in those children, and it affects all of us. Because we like to say they are the future, they are the future, and they are the future. But what we do today determines their future, the stance we take today. So I've taken a stance, and I will continue to defend it to the death. And I hope that others, upstanding citizens of St. Martin's, parents will hear this cry for your children's sake. Fill in the survey. It's online. Monitor your children. Talk to your children. Discuss when, or in fact, what I told one young man who was like, yeah, but that's what they're singing. I said, would you like to hear your 3-year-old sister singing that? Would you like to see them diving into her private parts? Because that's what one of the songs promotes, diving into the female private parts. That's the reality we're dealing with, St. Martin, and I'm hoping that you will join me in taking a stand for our youth. Have a wonderful carnival. Be safe. Allow our authorities to carry out their authority. And don't get upset when your child is walking around unattended, unaccompanied, and someone in authority asks them who they're with. Because anybody under 15 years is supposed to be in the company of an adult. Those are the rules and regulations of this land. And I hope that we are able to collaborate and cooperate to make sure our youth are protected. Thank you.
The members of the media are reminded to keep their questions to short and direct queries. Bibi Hatsha of SMN News, you have the floor.
Thank you, Giselle. I think I have the floor alone because I see no other media is here today. As I get back to my questions, I'll start off on this end of the table. Minister Lee, it's nice to hear you say a hospital is just a building after visiting St. Lucia and realizing that there's a hospital there sitting for 2 years. Bringing this back to St. Martin, there was a court case on Monday.
Excuse me, Bibi, I'm sorry. Your microphone is off. Could you turn it on, please? It's okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes. Bringing back this situation to St. Martin and what is going on at the St. Martin Medical Center at this moment, contesting the audit that has to take place, because the court case was on Monday about the norms, about who has rights and who doesn't have a right. What action do you plan to take to ensure that St. Martin Medical Center comply in getting qualified, up-to-par specialists, and even can have training for the staff? So when the hospital is built, finally, that we will have an operational hospital in St. Martin.
I'm not really clear what your question is, Bibi.
I'm asking you, based on the fact that you went to St. Lucia, you saw a hospital that was built. it's just a building because it's sitting there unused. You just said it. Now, we have a situation here in St. Martin where the St. Martin Medical Center is refusing to even allow an audit to take place. They have doctors that are not up to par, and they're not even complying with allowing the organs of the ministry to do their job so that we can get this hospital up to par and get the right specialists, the right people, get people trained so that when you finish the construction of the new general
BB,
hospital.
I'm sorry, you're asking a very long question and it's
He
hard
said he
to
doesn't
follow.
He doesn't
Okay.
understand, so I'm explaining him why. And what I'm asking, what are you going to do to ensure that the medical center, SMMC, comply with the organs and the laws of St. Martin so that we can get, again, qualified specialists, up to par specialists and training so that they can occupy the new hospital when constructed?
Okay, look, all along, the focus has been on improving the quality of healthcare for the country. From the very beginning, it was always recognized that a new hospital is simply a part of that entire system. So the ministry has been working on improving all aspects of healthcare, from the way our insurance functions, through SZV, through the qualifications of specialists. That's a process that, as you know, is there's a new BIC legislation that is actually in the hands of the inspectorate to finalize that legislation that will help to regulate the incoming specialists and the qualifications by which they need to comply with, right? So elevating or standardizing the standards of incoming specialists to make sure that it also means that we can bring in specialists from other countries, because we don't have a problem sending our patients to Colombia, but for Colombian physicians to come here to rotate through, to follow up with patients if necessary, is complicated and cumbersome. So we are looking at the entire healthcare chain and the processes and protocols, how we improve that. Regarding the relationship between the inspectorate and the SMMC, it is clear that the relationship between the inspectorate and SMMC is not functioning optimally. I'm not a person that believes in fighting. I think the fact that the relationship has deteriorated to the point that they need to go to court to identify individuals or institutions' rights and responsibilities and authorities, I think is sad. I think that if people have the interests of the country at heart, they should be able to sit down as mature institutions, individuals, and work it out, negotiate, talk about it, figure out what is a proper plan of action. And I think going to court is a way to bring about a solution and clarity. It is a right for everybody, right? But it should be the last resort. It should mean that you've talked about it and tried to find common ground. And I believe when it comes to the health of our population, that's a responsibility that both the inspectorate and the SMMC have, right? So, but if this is the way that they need to do it, then it's between them. It's a court case between the SMMC and the inspectorate, and I will await the outcome of that, and hopefully the ruling will help to identify everybody's role and responsibilities in healthcare. Having clarity on that is healthy for the system. How they got there, it was my wish, my hope, that they could have done it in a more amicable, constructive, consultative manner.
Just for clarity in your answer, who filed the court case? Because according to the newspaper, it's saying that the inspectorate filed the court case. Who filed it?
I'm not party to the court case. You could ask the SMMC or the inspectorate for clarity on that. I'm
All
not
right.
sure.
The baseline study that you hired a consultant to conduct, have you gotten reports on this, and what's the outcome?
The consultant has completed his investigations here. I believe he's in the process of finalizing those reports. I haven't had a chance to follow up and see if they've been completed or not, but I expect them on fairly short notice. The feedback that I've gotten is that it was a very positive process. Again, I believe that if the healthcare system is going to improve, people need to work together. And the feedback I've received, for example, from staff at the hospital was that because the process was one of improvement, how do we fix things, how do we make things better, that the staff opened up, they were more willing to talk because they felt that it was a constructive process rather than a destructive process. So I expect to see a report that will serve the function of being a tool to improve our healthcare system overall.
As per integrity investigations, can you tell us how many you have launched against you? Has the Ombudsman started an investigation based on a complaint filed by the inspectorate? With breaches, overreaching, integrity, whatever you want to call it?
Again, the inspectorate, I believe, is of the opinion that as minister, I'm interfering with his functioning. He's filed a complaint with the Ombudsman, and I'm actually in the process of responding to the Ombudsman. The first question they ask is, do you believe that this can be resolved in a more amicable way? And my response to the Ombudsman was, absolutely. I'm all for consultation, dialogue, and the same process that the inspectorate's going through the hospital, in a sense, is going through with me. In other words, as minister, I have the overall responsibility for quality of health care in St. Martin. And as a matter of fact, if you recall, the request to review or audit or perform a baseline study for our healthcare system was an initiative that came from my person. So I would ask the question, if anybody is interfering in a process, is the inspectorate interfering with what I initiated? Because it was my request to begin the process. It was my idea to say, look, there's a strained relationship between the inspectorate and the SMMC. Why not bring in an impartial third party to give an assessment as to the relationship, the proper way forward, whose authorities, to bring in a professional to help with that. That was one of the original intentions or objectives of the original survey of our healthcare system. How the different entities interact and work with each other, and is that functioning optimally, right? That was my initiative, right? So who's interfering with who? So I don't have any problems dealing with the inspectorate. Again, you like to criticize and say, Mr. Transparency. Well, yeah, you know what, Bibi? I own it, I wear it, no problem. I don't have any problem talking to the inspectorate. I don't have any problem talking to the Ombudsman and explaining that I am here to defend the health care of the population of St. Martin and see it improve. And I don't believe that fighting, going to court, helps that. So I told the Ombudsman I am more than happy to sit and have them function as a mediator or hire a mediator so that we can clarify the relationship.
Before you start your next question, we are going to, Minister, would you like to respond? No? Oh, I'm sorry. We are going to move over to the second round, and we have 2 questions left in this round.
Yes, but I want to ask the Minister for clarity, because there needs to be a clarity there. You said the inspectorate is interfering when you call for the audit, and that's true. You called for that audit on February 8th.
What I stated, Bibi, was if somebody is interfering
It's the inspectorate.
with an audit, with a process that I initiated, who's interfering with who? I wasn't stating he is. I'm simply stating, it would beg a question of who's interfering with whom.
My view is that SMMC refused to cooperate when they understood Holland was going to be involved.
Even in correspondence with the inspector, it's been made very clear by myself, and I believe by the SMMC as well. The inspectorate has the authority to go in at any time and inspect the hospital to perform his regular tasks as outlined by law. That is a task that I have not interfered with. That's a task that even the SMMC has said, we recognize your authority to do so, right? The purpose of the audit was to say, look, You want an outcome. An audit for the sake of conducting an audit doesn't serve the community. The audit should serve as a basis for how you move forward, how we're going to improve things. And if the two parties don't agree as to how the audit's conducted or what the outcomes are going to be, or if they're going to just end up in court later discussing the audit, it doesn't serve the community. It should serve as a basis for how do we move forward, how do we cooperate, how do we fix things. And if there's no consensus on how it's done, you won't get that end result. And I am after that end result. I am after the improvement in overall quality of healthcare of St. Martin.
Thank you. Minister Jacobs, are you replacing Minister Emmanuel that is over the dump? I can't call it any other word.
Yes, when Minister Yako is out, I will place him as Minister.
All right. Are you aware of an incident that took place there yesterday where a person lost their life? And what is your sentiments on this?
Yes, Bibi, I guess in my statements earlier, I neglected to mention that we were informed during Council of Ministers meeting yesterday that an incident had occurred. The head of the Vromi department that is charged with supervision did pass by the cabinet, but I was in the meeting at the time to inform of what had been happening, of the incident, that the gentleman had lost his life, apparently a scavenger, someone that's picking up and saving stuff, and we've had an incident like that, or using it to sell or to melt down, or whatever the case may be. I'm not aware of the details of what the person was doing or what he was scavenging for, but apparently it's a practice that happens quite often. So at that moment, as a council, we discussed who is responsible, who would be held accountable, and it was made clear that the investigative process would take place first with the police department, after which then the relevant authorities would take the necessary steps. However, we know that, or it was mentioned in that meeting, that a whole section of the dump is, like, people can get in without going through the gates. An individual can go over a fence or whatever the case may be, and that the area surrounding the dump is an area that has the attention of the Minister of Vromi, and that they are taking steps towards rectifying that. Other than that, I say my condolences to the family of the gentleman that lost his life. Of course, no one wants loss of life over any, for me, stupid reasons, and it's unnecessary. And so after the investigation is complete, I'm sure the Minister of Vromi will be here to further enlighten you as to what next, etc.